Well, good evening, everybody. So tonight we're going to be going over Sutta MN22, the Simile of the Snake. It is a very popular sutta. Yeah. First, I'd like to share with you, though, that today, this morning, Sister Kema passed. And she had been ill for quite some time. It was not a surprise. But I thought you all should know and say a little bit about Sister Kema. Those of you, many of you may not have met her, but Sister Kema was involved in Dhamma Sukha from the very beginning. Her and Bhante Vimalaramsi basically were co-founders. Bhante was the spiritual director and abbot, and Kema was his assistant and helped in very many ways to build this that we are here right now. Those of you who knew Kema knew her energy and knew her great passion for Dhamma and spreading the Dhamma. Her energy was instrumental in building this place. When I first came here in 2006, here was the A-frame, that building that's down below that now was destroyed by a storm. Just holds a four-wheeler in it. There was 2 trailers and the log cabin where we do interviews. And that was all that was there in the beginning. And for many years, Sister Kema used chainsaws and power tools and cleared the land much of the day. And the rest of the time she was writing and preparing and building the beginnings of TWIM and Dhamma Sukha with Bhante. Later in her life, she spent her time in Asia, Malaysia, India, and most recently in Poland. So, yep, she was, without Sister TWIM would not be as it is today. That is easy to say for sure. And I think we will all remember her for her energy, her enthusiasm, her ability to talk Dhamma at a moment's notice. She absolutely loved to do that. Yeah, it was quite remarkable, really. Okay. And I suppose this brings us right into the 5 recollections that we read every morning. Every morning, we remind ourselves, we are subject to illness. We are subject to death. We are subject to have those things dear to us taken away. Some of these are maybes, but some are not. Some are certain. We are the owners of our karma. These recollections, recollecting the nature of our existence and how we are in this world, are not meant to be morose. They may be sobering. They may wake you up to your situation, and that's exactly what they're meant to do. To inspire a little bit of urgency, a little bit of alertness, a little bit of focus on what you're doing now and what you want to have left behind, and preparation for what's to come. Realism, bringing you to your practice, bringing you to the Dhamma. And of course, these are not to be dwelt on in a way that brings fear or anxiety. These are to bring alertness and wake us up to what to do. The 5th recollection is that of karma. Karma is an important idea to talk about. I think this week we've been discussing aspects of karma, but not saying the word specifically. Karma is a mechanism, an explanation of cause and effect. It is a mechanism how what we have done in the past affects us in the present, and how what we do in the present will affect us in the future. It's an atemporal or beyond time mechanism. It works in unpredictable ways. And as we think about karma, that's an important thing to understand. This is not explanatory. We don't think about karma as a way of really understanding why things happen. We don't see a bad thing happening to us or others and think, well, they deserved it. That's clearly bad karma. Uh, and conversely, we don't hold on to good situations as something to be prideful for and so on, right? What karma is useful for, the idea, one of the many things it's useful for, is the idea of how to think about our present experience and how to think of good and bad situations. So first, karma, we create it with our intention and with our action. Karma is a combination of intention and then an action that happens. So for example, if we talk about the darkest karma, murder, perhaps the darkest karma, this is the explanation, the example we always use. And, in order to commit murder, you have to have the intention to commit the murder. There has to be a being that is alive. There has to be a plan to kill the being. There has to be the execution of the plan, and it has to work. With all of those things together, then we have created the dark karma. And conversely, that works for light karma and the other kinds of karma. You want to create bright karma. So you have an intention to say something nice. So there's a person there. You make the plan to say something nice. You say something nice. You do it and they hear it. And there you go. The bright karma is created. Karma will ripen soon or in the future for unknown reasons. We classify karma in terms of bright, dark, both dark and bright, and neither dark nor bright. So bright karma leads to pleasant results. Dark karma leads to unpleasant results. Bright and dark, mixed results. So mixed action does good and bad, has bad and good results. And then neither bright nor dark is karma that leads to nibbana. By following the Noble Eightfold Path, 6Ring, practicing meditation, letting go, not taking things personally, we're developing not bright and bright karma. So our intention and our behavior creates the karma to be ripened now or later. So when we think about this, this is a useful way to think about events in our life, perhaps. The good events we can celebrate. Good karma ripening, that is nice. And bad events we can celebrate. Bad karma ripening, how nice that we're through it and how nice we can repattern it. For what our intentions and our behavior will change the future. So even with dark karma, dark events, painful events, we have a chance to make bright or neither bright nor dark karma. We respond appropriately and skillfully. And so like that. So getting into the simile of the snake, this sutta, it's about many things. And it's a little different than some of the suttas we've been doing earlier this week, in that we've been doing some more technical suttas, really going over lists of items and really building up our vocabulary and our skill set for our meditation. So we know how to think about things and what to do in response to them and start to analyze our experience a little bit. This is more of a story with characters and events. And so some suttas are like that. It's a rather long sutta. So I don't expect we'll be finishing it tonight. I mean, we could take a couple, 2 or 3 hours, but I think that would be better spent meditating, right? One of the takeaways I have from this, I like about this sutta, is it talks about views, and it talks about opinions and the effects of them. So views are actually, wrong view is actually a 4th taint we haven't mentioned. We talked about 3 taints: the taint of becoming, trying to project, control things, the taint of sensual desire, push and pull from our experience, the taint of ignorance, the habit of losing mindfulness, the habit of forgetting the fact of the Four Noble Truths. Taints, of course, are habits, they're distractions, they're things that arise that condition all of our experience when they're present. The taint of views is fourth taint, taint of wrong view. And one of the things I hope to explain a little bit is how views of any kind, wrong view, it patterns and somewhat poisons the entire process of our experience and cognition. Having a view present distorts and prevents us from fully understanding what's happening and learning new information. And so part of the story is a monk who holds a wrong view and is unable to let go of it. One of the wrong views, I think is a good example of a wrong view, is reductionist materialism. Views and worldviews like this, we're indoctrinated into. By that I mean they permeate us and our culture without us even realizing it. And they make our assumptions in a particular way. The reductionist materialist paradigm basically is that matter exists. Matter is the ground of reality. It acts in predictable ways, and it's explainable by laws of physics that we can know. And anything we cannot measure, probably not there. That's one of the assumptions of it. And this is a very compelling worldview. We use it to make cell phones and airplanes. And so it seems to work very well and powerfully. But actually everyone who holds it even understands this. There are some big blind spots, like consciousness, like our experience. There is this hard problem of consciousness, and that we don't know how it happens from the materialist view. It doesn't make sense. So what a blind spot. Hold this view, it makes plans for us, and so we hold it. It saves lives, we can make medicine, we can do things with it. But it doesn't explain most of our experience. But that's fine, we get cell phones. They're pretty neat, I mean, really. And so it has some use, right? Ultimately, this is an annihilationist view. Because consciousness is a function of matter. And when matter stops working appropriately, consciousness, of course, goes away, and annihilation. And of course, that is the distortion. And having this affects everything we think like that. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. Now on that occasion a pernicious view has arisen in a monk named Rita, formerly of the vulture killers, thus: as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. Several monks, having heard about this, went to the Bhikkhu Arita and asked him, Friend Arita, is it true that such a pernicious view has arisen in you? Exactly so, friends. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. Then these monks, desiring to detach him from that pernicious view, pressed and questioned and cross-questioned him thus: Friend Arita, do not say so. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It is not good to misrepresent the Blessed One. The Blessed One would not speak thus, for in many ways the Blessed One has stated how obstructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. The Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. With the simile of the skeleton, with the simile of the piece of meat, with the simile of the grass torch, with the simile of the pit of coals, with the simile of the dream, with the simile of the borrowed goods, with the simile of fruits on a tree, with the simile on a butcher's knife and block, with the simile of a sword stake, with the simile of a snake's head, the Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. Yet, although pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by those monks in this way, the monk of Rita, formerly of the vulture killers, still obstinately adhered to that pernicious view and continued to insist upon it. I find that so fascinating, that one confronted with that from one's fellow monks would hang on to the view, so directly against the teachings. We see the same verbiage in the Greater Discourse of Destruction of Craving in MN 38. And these are monks that are confronted by their peers that tell them, hey, this is wrong. And yet they're so certain in their view, so arrogant in the view that they cannot change it. With Arita, it's particularly sad because his view is about the mundane eightfold path, right? His right view interferes with his training. And when it interferes with his training, he cannot properly enter upon the Noble Eightfold Path and start seeing in a way where his views may be loosened. You see, part of the Eightfold Path, part of the Noble Eightfold Path is letting go of obsessions, of views, letting go of standpoints and ways of looking at things, and being more flexible in our thinking. That's fundamental to that. And so here he is with the view that traps him and prevents him from reaching the one thing that could actually help him. The other thing about the arrogance of this, I just come back to materialist view. Sounds like I'm anti-science or anti-materialism. That is not farthest from the truth. I use science. I love science. It's fantastic. I like my cell phone. I use it all the time. But confidence in a view like this can bring arrogance. When you're certain you know how things work, when you're certain how you know what works, and that allows you to shut out other alternatives in what other people say. I have a feeling I'm going to harp on medicine tonight. That's partially because it's my profession and partially because we see this. I talk to patients frequently that have some of their providers tell them their symptoms are impossible. Based on their diagnosis, it cannot happen. They cannot be experiencing that. That's just astounding to me. Astounding that one would know this science so well that you would know someone's consciousness, which you don't even believe really exists. So, yeah. Since the monks were unable to detach him from that pernicious view, they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and told him all that had occurred, adding, Venerable Sir, since we could not detach the monk Arita, formerly of the vulture killers, from this pernicious view, we have reported this matter to the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One addressed a certain monk thus, Come, monk, tell the monk Arita, formerly of the vulture killers, in my name that the teacher calls him. Yes, Venerable Sir, he replied, and he went to the Bhikkhu Arita and told him, the teacher calls you, friend Arita. Yes, friend, he replied, and he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him and sat down at one side. Blessed One then asked them, Rita, is it true that the following pernicious view has arisen in you? As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. Exactly so, Venerable Sir. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things that are called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. Misguided man, to whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in this way? Misguided man, have I not stated in many ways how instructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them? I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and the danger in them is still more. With the simile of the skeleton, with the simile of a piece of meat, with the simile of the grass torch, with the simile of a pit of coals, with the simile of a dream, with the simile of a borrowed good, with the simile of fruits on a tree, with the simile of a butcher's knife and block, with the simile of a sword stake, with the simile of a snake's head, I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and the danger in them is still more. But you, misguided man, by your wrong grasp, have misrepresented us, injured yourself, and stored up much demerit, for this will lead to your harm and suffering for a long time. Then the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: Monks, what do you think? Has this Monkarita, formerly of the vulture killers, kindled even a spark in wisdom in this Dhamma and discipline? So this event, as I understand it, is actually it happened twice in the Bhikkhu Sangha, and this is the first incident of a monk getting expelled. And the Bhante's can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it came up once, he was corrected, and then he was at it again, and then he was expelled, and then he disrobed without trying to change his opinion. So he brought innovation to the Sangha. He taught them how to expel members and what to do in the case of something like this. Well, at least that is something good that came out of it. But this view prevented him from the training completely. The view prevented him from the training in the beginning, it prevented him from the training in the end. And I think about that dark karma that must have had to be in the presence in the Buddha's Sangha, a monk under him, and then this. And frankly, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward view that he is disagreeing with. That, of course, that sensual pleasures do obstruct one when engaged in certain ways. Certain behaviors and intentions do lead to a certain kind of karma that does pull one away from full awakening. That's the idea. Then how could this be? And then the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Sir thus: Monks, what do you think? Has this Monkarita, formerly of the vulture killers, even kindled a spark in wisdom as this Dhamma and discipline? How could he, Venerable Sir? No, Venerable Sir. When this was said, the Monkarita, formerly of the vulture killers, sat silent, dismayed, with shoulders drooping and head down, glum and without response. Then, knowing this, the Blessed One told him, Misguided man, you will be recognized by your own pernicious view. I shall question the monks in this matter. Then the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: Monks, do you understand the Dhamma taught by me as this Monkarita, formerly of the vulture killers, does? When by his wrong grasp he misrepresents us, injures himself, and stores up much demerit. No, Venerable Sir, for in many ways the Blessed One has stated how obstructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. The Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger is them and still more. With the simile of the skeleton, with the simile of the snake's head, the Blessed One has stated that danger in them is still more. Good monks, it is good you have understand the Dhamma taught by me thus. For many ways I have stated how obstructive things are obstructive and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. With the simile of the skeleton, up to the simile of the snake's head, I have stated the danger in them is still more. But this Monkarita, formerly of the vulture killers, by his wrong grasp, misrepresents us, injures himself, and stores up much demerit, for this will lead to this misguided man's harm for a long time. Monks, that one can engage in sensual pleasures without sensual desires, without perception of sensual desire, without thoughts of sensual desire. This is impossible. So, as we're talking about not grasping the Dhamma appropriately and not utilizing the Dhamma and following the teachings. The teachings of the Dhamma lead beyond views. The Noble Eightfold Path leads beyond views. Views tighten and constrict the mind and induce craving. Every time you 6R, what happens to your mind? When you 6R, it is open and clear after that. There's no thoughts. There's no views. Every time a sensual trigger comes in, a thought, a sight, a sound, we have the option of what to do about it. Do we engage in it in a way? What kind of karma do we make in response to it? Of course, we're going to find ourselves pulled in at first. Of course, we're going to find ourselves thinking about this or that. When we find ourselves pulled in, we let it go, we relax. As we can see more clearly, we let go more and more. This is the process of letting go of our attachment, of our views. Our views flavor our attachment. And Dhamma can be taken as a view as well. And this is not the intention of the Dhamma. When we're learning all these lists and we're learning about, the sixfold base, learning about the 12 steps of dependent origination, the idea is we're not learning a new world model and then this is now our new world model. Like, oh, my reductionist material view was wrong. Now this one is right. Now I'm going to identify with this one. This is me. That is being stuck in views as well. The Dhamma is a view not to be grasped permanently. It's a view to be used and utilized. We have to properly understand it so we can follow it through the Eightfold Path. But ultimately, this is not a new view of self. And as tempting as it is to make it a view of self, that's really not what it's for. See, any view, any worldview we have is attempting to explain reality. It's attempting to have a model, have a predictive model of what we want to happen or how things work. And this works in partial ways, but our model of the world cannot align with what is happening. And that project to make it be so is ultimately going to be met with failure. We have an idea of how something should be, how it could be, and it can work in a particular way, but reality is multi-dimensional, multifolded. There's different ways of looking at things that can be true at the same time. And so when we fit our models too tightly, even if it's a model of Dhamma, we're left with something that is at odds with our situation. With the Western materialism, we're left with the confusion about consciousness. We are left with the confusion of how our world works, and we try to fit it in there, and it creates tension. It creates craving, because our idea of how it's supposed to be is different than what's in front of us. And that's how we create our suffering. And by holding to these models too forcefully, that's exactly how it works. As this moves on, you can think of it as a whirlpool, to borrow Bhikkhu Yanananda's imagery of our idea of things and how a thing's supposed to be, trying to match it as we go back and forth and creating a turbulence in our mind. When we hold a fixed view, there's always some amount of turbulence there. And there's always a concern, I think, when we talk about letting go of views or letting go of the aggregates, letting go of our thoughts or whatever we identify with, that we're letting go of it all. But we're not. We're letting go of the turbulence. We let go of the turbulence and what is left. What is left is what is there that can be seen clearly now, like that. Here, monks, some misguided men learn the Dhamma. Discourses, stanzas, expositions, verses, exclamations, and sayings, birth stories, marvels, and answers to questions. But having learned the Dhamma, they do not examine the meaning of those teachings with wisdom. Not examining the meaning of those teachings with wisdom, they do not gain a reflective acceptance of them. Instead, they learn the Dhamma only for the sake of criticizing others and winning debates as a concept. And they do not experience the good for the sake of which they learn the Dhamma. The teachings, being wrongly grasped by them, conduce to their harm and suffering for a long time. Why is that? Because of the wrong grasp of those teachings. And so taking these teachings as a concept and holding as a concept and not investigating it and putting it into practice where it is in your experience is a source of suffering. And this is possibly what was going on with the Rita, not putting them into practice, viewing them as a concept, working them as a set of symbols and trying to work out the outcome he wants. Because that's the other thing we do with materialism and science, is we use it to explain things in a way we want it to be. We want it to be a particular way, and we use the stories and theories we have, and we make that happen. I was talking with one of you today about this and how the brain works in opinions. And the idea is our opinions and decisions, how we experience them, are more explanatory rather than the actual decision itself. As we look at fMRI studies, we look at the brain, and the decision appears to be made in the brain a good 4 to 5 seconds before we experience the decision being made. So we have a series of processes, craving and clinging, that happens after the real decision is made, that explain why it's made. By the way, we do a similar thing with our opinions. Our opinions we think are well reasoned out, but actually they're not. They are a social construct. By that I mean what we think are our opinions, we choose them internally by imagining what our peers would think of us when we were saying them to them. No, as we rehearse in our heads what everyone will think about us having this opinion, we decide if it's a good one or not. That's how we think about that. And these views are not about facts. These views are not about facts. So if you talk about someone really entrenched in a view, you can give someone all sorts of information, and they will repurpose that information to reinforce their view. You can say, oh, it's not like this. Look at this evidence, look at this evidence. And somehow at the end of it, they'll be more firmly convinced in what they believed in the beginning. That's how we think. So our thinking is not as logical as we pretend it is. It's a process due to conditions like that. By the way, how do you get people to start entrenching themselves in the view? Views like that? You somehow get them to look at why they're convinced about it. They somehow sort of look about why they're convinced, they start to maybe have a chance. It's like that. Look at how the process of you being convinced, not the content. The content, you will be a master at manipulating however you want. Suppose a man meeting a snake, seeing a snake, wandering in search of a snake, saw a large snake and grasped its coils or tail. It would turn back on him and bite his hand or arm or one of his limbs. And because of that, he would come to death or deadly suffering. Why is that? Because of his wrong grasp of the snake. So too, here some misguided men learn the Dhamma only for the sake of criticizing others and winning debates, and they do not experience the good for the sake of which they learn the Dhamma. The teachings being wrongly grasped by them conduce to their harm and suffering for a long time. Why is that? Because of the wrong grasp of those teachings. And this is the simile of the snake. It's a really, really good simile, actually. You think you need a snake and you try to grab it, you grab it wrongly, it will hurt you. You grasp the Dhamma incorrectly, it is not going to work out. It's not going to work as it's supposed to do. And there will be problems from that. Here, monks, some clansmen learn the Dhamma, and the problems are you don't get to practice the teachings. The wrong grasp in particular is not practicing and not reflecting on them and putting them into action. just taking them as intellectual symbols and games and toys that you can play with other intellectual symbols and games and toys you picked up. That's not what it's for. Here monks, some clansmen learn the Dhamma, discourses, answers to questions, and having learned the Dhamma, they examine the meaning of those teachings with wisdom. Examining the meaning of these teachings with wisdom, they gain a reflective acceptance of them. They do not learn the Dhamma for the sake of criticizing others and for winning in debates. They experience the good for the sake of which they learn the Dhamma. Those teachings, being rightly grasped by them, conduce to their welfare and happiness for a long time. Why is that? Because of the right grasp of the teachings. Suppose a man needing a snake, seeking a snake, wandering in search of a snake, saw a large snake and caught it rightly with the cleft stick. Having done so, grasped it rightly by the neck. Then, although the snake might wrap its coils around his hand or his arm or his limbs, still he would not come to death or deadly suffering because of that. Why is that? Because of his right grasp of the snake. So too, here some clansmen learn the Dhamma learn the Dhamma for the good of the sake which they learn the Dhamma. They do not learn for the Dhamma for the sake of criticizing others. Examining the meanings of teaching with wisdom, they gain a reflective acceptance of them. That's a great part of the analogy too. Suppose you're looking for the Dhamma, you're looking for the teachings, you're looking for a snake. If we call it that, awakening a snake, I don't know. But you grab them appropriately and you grab them safely. And they wrap right around your arm. They wrap right around your arm and there you go and you can carry it. I like that. There is a grasping to the Dhamma as we start to work with it. And that is helpful. If we practice the Dhamma, it is okay to rely on it and have confidence in it and even cling to it a little bit initially. This, when we are practicing, is for our benefit. It provides energy, enthusiasm, and moves us forward in our practice. And it's natural to have enthusiasm for this as it starts to work. As we start to see it work, as people around us see it start to work, as our lives start to lighten up, of course enthusiasm happens. And the enthusiasm we let us take forward. And we let our change inform others of what this is about. We don't throw the snake in their laps necessarily. Right? They're going to grasp it wrongly. It's going to be confusing. Right? Prophesizing too much about anything, that's a good way to help reinforce those negative opinions or help people not be open to something new. Simply your example, your lightning, your happiness, the way you are in the world, that is the first thing. And then we talk about it, of course, and we share it when people are interested and see what it is, right? Not a bunch of concepts that confuses and scares them, but how we are in the world. Because this is what this is about, is how we are in the world. Therefore, monks, when you understand the meaning of my statements, remember it accordingly. And when you do not understand the meaning of my statements, then ask either me about it or the monks who are wise. Monks, I shall show you how the Dhamma is similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over and not for the purpose of grasping. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say, Venerable Sir. The monks replied, the Blessed One said this. And so we're on to a new simile here. That was the simile of the snake. That was a very important simile, talking about wrong grasp of Dhamma and what happens. And discussing the difficulty of views and our preconceptions of how to open to it. And it also mentioned how it's important to ask questions about things that confuse us and to have discussion about questions. And this can open it up for you as well when there is concerns about it. That's why Sangha is important. That's why we are important to each other. So the simile of raft, this is another fantastic simile. Monks, suppose a man in the course of a journey saw a great expanse of water, whose near shore was dangerous and fearful, whose further shore was safe and free from fear. But there was no ferry boat or bridge for going to the far shore. Then he thought, there is a great expanse of water, whose near shore is dangerous and fearful, and whose further shore is safe and free from fear. But there is no ferry boat or bridge for going to the far shore. Suppose I collect grass, twigs, branches, and leaves and bind them together in a raft. Supported by the raft and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. And then the man collected grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, bound them together in a raft, and supported by a raft and making an effort with his hands and feet, he got safely to the far shore. So in this simile, the great expanse of water, of course, the mind with the four taints in it. The near scary shore we can think as maybe self-identity view. The far shore, awakening, and that raft is something we construct with the Eightfold Path. And we paddle across the treacherous waters of our mind with persistence, with effort, under our own effort, and we get to the other side. That's the analogy. Then when he got across and arrived at the far shore, he might think thus, this raft has been very helpful for me, since supported by it and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to hoist it on my head or load it on my shoulder and then go wherever I want. Now, monks, what do you think? By doing so, would that man be doing what should be done with that raft? No, venerable sir. By doing what that man would be doing, what should be done with the raft? Here, monks, when that man got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think thus, this raft has been very helpful to me, since it's supported by it and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to haul it onto the dry land or set it adrift in the water and then go wherever I want. Now, monks, it is by doing so that the man would be doing what should be done with that raft. So I have shown you how the Dhamma is similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping. Monks, when you know the Dhamma to be similar to a raft, you should abandon even the teachings, how much more things contrary to the teachings. So this is an interesting and subtle or not so subtle point of this. This is talking about how does one view the teachings after one has completed the path. And it is not talking about throwing away the teachings and what was done before. As we talked about, when you practice the mundane right Eightfold Path, you're practicing Sila, you're practicing Dana, you're practicing Bhavana, you're practicing avoiding what is harmful, you're practicing doing what is helpful, and you're practicing your meditation, you're practicing letting go in 6 R's. As you practice this, and eventually, when one attains nibbana, a taste of nibbana, a degree of awakening or complete awakening, these teachings become automatic. They become just what you do. So they still remain true, but that grasp and attachment to the teachings goes away. It goes away fundamentally because they are being used as a concept, and all concepts are led away. And maybe this is one of the confusion that Arita was having. What happens when you let go, when you actually have completed the path? And what is your view of Sila at that point? It's the default. You naturally do that. That's what you naturally want to do. It's not effort. It's not something you provide effort on. There's no paddling across anything. It is just how it is. Like that. So when one has some degree of awakening, the shift from the mundane to the noble path is a reduction of concepts. We talked about description. The one with noble right view is simply observation. is simply mindfulness, simply investigation, without concepts, just doing that. Not holding intention with it, not holding opinions, not obsession, just doing that. This is, again, where the 6 R's point us. We know what we're to do. When we have our concepts and our thoughts going on, we 6R and relax. What is left is clarity. And that clarity, are we unable to function? Are we unable to do things? No, we naturally bring up loving kindness. One who has seen through concepts can use concepts. They can use concepts without being trapped by them and stuck in them. An arahat can speak just fine, I have heard. No problem with that, probably better than before. If we go back to the medical model, why not? We've been picking them on all day. You have a provider that is very stuck in what they know. They don't understand how things work, so they don't recommend anything that is outside the reductionist materialist view. Now they have a little space and they can see things and they have other options. Perhaps they recommend acupuncture for pain, right? As acupuncture, that's ridiculous. What's qi? We can't measure it. Is it there? It's only 5,000, 6,000 years of people using qi as a concept to work and heal people too. That's a mental model that works fine. It's in absolute opposition to, not absolute, but pretty opposite to reductionist materialistic, unexplainable. They even talk about a liver that's not right here. Their liver is angry and has a lot of energy in it. It's a different liver, right? These two paradigms, these two concepts are at absolute odds to each other to some degree. Grasping onto one of them too tightly, the other is not available. They're both pointing directly to reality, and that's fine. And this is how concepts should be grasped as function and use. Your goal, your temptation from a place of a sense of self is to make a grand unified theory for everything, where every part works and connects and it all makes a lot of sense. Yeah, right? Wouldn't that be great? I mean, I guess, but it doesn't work that way. And hanging on to this, we cause ourselves suffering. We're trying to solve a problem that's unsolvable. We're setting up a craving, like even undertaking that project. And as we said, it's fine. The materialist provider can refer to acupuncture and the patient can get better. Everyone's happy. And the acupuncturist doesn't have to say anything about it. You know, they all work together, right? That's what it is like when you see through views. The views function, but they are not defining your experience like that. When they are there unchallenged, when you're holding to them in a fixed way, when they're unseen, then we're limited and we're making mistakes and causing ourselves suffering. Monks, there are these 6 standpoints for views. What are the 6? Here, monks, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true men and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, regards material form thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. He regards feeling thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. He regards formations thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. He regards what is seen, heard, sensed, cognized, encountered, sought, mentally pondered thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. And this is the standpoint for views, namely, that which is the self is the world. After death I shall be permanent and everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. I shall endure as long as eternity. This too who regards thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. Monks, a well-taught noble disciple who has regard for the noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, who has regard for true men and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, regards material form thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. He regards feeling thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. He regards perception thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. He regards formations thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. He regards what is seen, heard, sensed, cognized, encountered, sought, mentally pondered thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And this standpoint for views, namely, that which is a self is the world. After death I shall be permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. I shall endure as long as eternity. This too he regards thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Since he regards them thus, he is not agitated about what is non-existent. So we can think of our practice as a series of letting goes, of letting go in deeper and deeper levels. We can think of the progression of jhanas as a series of letting go. From the first jhana, letting go of the hindrances, letting go, second jhana, letting go of thinking, letting go of that joy in the third jhana, letting go further and further and further. We're not attaining a state. We're not grasping onto it. We're not reaching it. We're letting go until we fall into it, like that. We're letting go of the tension and tightness. We're letting go of the habit of taking our views personally, you letting them construct our thoughts. We're letting go. As we go down deeper, we see more clearly how this happens. Starting somewhere in infinite consciousness, and really as we get deeper into neither perception or non-perception, we're seeing as these small things, these small formations, these small constructions arise and pass away. We let go of the vibration. We let go of the place the vibration is about to happen. And from that place, we can actually see the idea of self come up and go away. We can actually see how those separate feelings are bound together by tightness. We can see how they come up and we start positioning ourselves or making a position happen. And we can see how much more comfortable and clear it is to not do that craving, to not make that position, to let it come up and let it go away. And we let go more and more until sooner or later, sometimes far before the signless, we fall into cessation. And in cessation, we know nothing. There is no construction. But it is not an annihilation. We exit cessation. We exit with clear awareness. And we see dependent origination. Maybe the first time we do this, we don't see it as clearly. Maybe it's kind of a mess. Maybe we remember back and we don't know exactly what happens. We see nibbana. Maybe the first time we don't see it a long time, but we reflect back and we know what it is. And this seeing nibbana changes everything. And nibbana is not nothing. Nibbana is something. Nibbana is an element. Nibbana can be experienced. But it's beyond concepts. It's beyond conceptualization. So we can't talk about it. We can hardly think about it. Our concepts fall off it. But understanding that changes everything. Understanding that even if we don't see it clearly, it changes how our mind works. It loosens the concepts. It loosens our attachment to the concepts, to the things that pull us. And it allows some freedom from our imprisonment in language, our imprisonment in our views. Of course, whenever we siksar, we get a flavor of this too. Whenever we siksar and relax, when we let go of the craving, we have a taste of being free from views, a taste of being free from craving and the taints also. And so this is not an annihilist philosophy. As we let go into Nibbana. We let go, and we let go of the views of annihilation, to let go of the views of permanence, and that frees our mind. That's simple. When it was said, a certain monk asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, can there be agitation about what is non-existent externally? There can, monk. The Blessed One said, Hear, monks, someone thinks thus, Alas, I had it. Alas, I have it no longer. Alas, may I have it. Alas, I do not get it. And then he sorrows, grieves, and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. That is how there's agitation about what is non-existent externally. Venerable Sir, can there be no agitation about what is non-existent externally? There can be, monk. The Blessed One said, Hear, monk, someone does not think thus. Alas, I had it. Alas, I have it no longer. Alas, I may have it. Alas, I do not get it. Then he does not sorrow, grieve, and lament. He does not weep, beating his breast and become distraught. That is how there is no agitation about what is non-existent externally. Venerable Sir, can there be agitation about what is non-existent internally? There can, monk. The Blessed One said, Here, monk, someone has the view, that which is the self is the world. After death I shall be impermanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. I shall endure as long as eternity. He hears the Tathagata, or disciple of the Tathagata, teaching the Dhamma for the elimination of all standpoints, decisions, obsessions, adherences, and underlying tendencies, for the stilling of all formations, for the relinquishment of all attachments, for the destruction of craving, for dispassion, for cessation, for nibbana. He thinks thus, so I shall be annihilated, so I shall perish, so I shall be no more. Then he sorrows, grieves, and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. This is how there is agitation about what is non-existent internally. Venerable Sir, can be there no agitation about what is non-existent internally? There can be, monk. The Venerable One said, Here, monk, someone does not have the view. That is what that which is the self is the world. After death I shall be permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. I shall endure as long as eternity. He hears the Tathagata, or disciple of the Tathagata, teaching the Dhamma for the elimination of all standpoints, decisions, obsessions, adherences, and underlying tendencies, for the stilling of all formations, for the relinquishment of all attachments, for the destruction of craving, for dispassion, for cessation, for nibbana. He does not think thus, so I shall be annihilated, so I shall perish, so I shall be no more. Then he does not sorrow, grieve, and lament. He does not weep, beating his breast, and become distraught. This is not how there is no agitation about what is non-existent internally. Monks, and this is impermanence and not self. Monks, you may acquire that possession that is permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change, and that might endure for as long as eternity. That phrasing is funny, right? You might well acquire that. You might. Go for it. Yeah, please do, please do. But do you see any such possession, monks? No, Venerable Sir. Good monks, I too do not see any possession of that is permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change, that might endure as long as eternity. Monks, you may well cling to that doctrine of self that would not arouse sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in one who clings do it, you could go for it. But do you see any such doctrine of self, monks? No, venerable sir. Good monks, I too do not see any doctrine of self that would not arouse sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in one who clings to it. Monks, you may well take as a support that view that would not arouse sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, one who takes it as a support. Any view. But do you see such any support of views, monks? No, venerable sir. Good monk, I too do not see any support of views that would not arouse sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in one who takes it as support. Monks, there being a self, would there be for me what belongs to a self? Yes, venerable sir. Or there being what belongs to a self, would there be for me a self? Yes, venerable sir. Monks, since a self and what belongs to a self are not apprehended as true and as established, then the standpoint for views, namely, that which is the self is the world, after death I shall be permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. I shall endure as long as eternity. Would it not be an utterly and completely foolish teaching? What else could it be, venerable sir, but an utterly and completely foolish teaching? What do you think? Is material form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, venerable sir. Is what is permanent suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this is my, this I am, this is myself. No, venerable sir. What do you think? Is feeling, is perception, are formations, is consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, venerable sir. Therefore, monks, any kind of material form whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all material form should it be seen as it actually is with wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of feeling whatsoever, whether past or future, present or eternal, external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all feeling should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of perception whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all perception should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of formations whatsoever, whether past or future, present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all formation should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future, present, internal, external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all consciousness should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Seeing thus, monks, a well-taught noble disciple becomes disenchanted with material form, disenchanted with feeling, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with formations, disenchanted with consciousness. Being disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge, it is liberated. He understands birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. So I think we'll stop there reading the sutta, but I'd like to read two quotes for you. And I think this kind of sums it up. He hears the Tathagata or disciple of the Tathagata teaching the Dhamma for the elimination of all standpoints, decisions, obsessions, adherences, and underlying tendencies, for the stilling of all formations, for the relinquishing of all attachments, and for the destruction of craving, for dispassion, for cessation, for nibbana. Monks, formally and now, what I teach is suffering and the cessation of suffering. All right. Any questions? Yeah.
What were the vulture killers?
Uh-oh.
Talking to the stick. What were the vulture killers?
Oh, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's this group. Yeah, yeah. Do you know Bhante? The vulture killers?
It's like the son of a fisherman, the Sati story. These were, I believe, were some sort of hunters killing those birds, vultures.
Okay.
It's a thing in Nepal.
Got it.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
He's coming from that
Family, that was their profession. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that was their profession. They were hunters.
Oh.
But it's interesting that with that question is in the case of Sati, he was a son of a fisherman.
Yes.
Also had a wrong view.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Sounded just like it.
this person also, and he left as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
So this person also had a wrong view, and whatever they did, their family did as a profession, is
Yep.
highlighted in the beginning of the sutta.
Right. So some dark karma there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say there is an example of a butcher who became awakened, right? And an alcoholic who became awakened.
Yeah.
I mean, this is important, though, that your familial karma and your karma from this life is not surmountable. There's Angulimala, the greatest murderers, like, so just pointing that out, it's surmountable, but they're both from that.
So go have some alcohol.
No. That's what we said, no.
Happy hour Friday nights.
But there's hope if that's your situation. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like,
Comment about that. So I was thinking about at the very start when he's saying that, these things are not going to obstruct you if you engage in them. And wondering if that's kind of like almost maybe sometimes when people go home from here and their friends might say, oh, you know what? A drink's not going to hurt you. Or it's not that big of a deal. You can do these things. It's really okay. And I don't know if that's the exact same situation, but it almost sounded like it was that kind of a situation, like somebody saying, oh, don't worry about it. You can still have fun and do all these things. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
But yeah, no, they still,
Yeah.
they do matter.
Yeah, thanks for your talk. So I'm imagining a conversation with someone who doesn't follow the path. And I tell this person, the problem with chasing feelings, pleasant feelings for the rest of your life is that they're impermanent, they'll lead you to suffering and not worth holding on to and identifying with. And the person says, well, I don't know what's going to happen, at the end of this life, and I know that these pleasures are impermanent, right? That's why I keep chasing more and more. He goes, but, until I die, like, what's so bad about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? It's just, it's just the way it is. It's impermanent. And, like, you can't hold that against pleasure, that it's impermanent.
Well, that's an easy answer. Those things actually are not that pleasant. When you really look at, I mean, you can use a goal of hedonism to pull you along the path. You just have to really examine what's happening. What happens with alcohol? You get hungover. What happens with, with poor lifestyle? You feel worse. And so that can be examined directly. I mean, what happens? That happens, you feel bad. And still, someone like that, you can talk about the joy of the Dhamma, joy of Dhamma, joy of jhana, joy of good meditation. That's I mean, sell it. That's a happiness that's greater than that, like in volume actually, and it doesn't lead to the problems. So even that view, seek pleasure, great. Just really look to see where the pleasure is. Fine. Like just really look to see what's actually pleasure or not. That's the trick. Again, that's the trick. What is really happening?
So it sounds like just look at the logical consequences. The pleasure you're seeking, damages your body in the long run, versus the pleasure of jhana, which is not going to damage you. If anything, it's just going to enhance your life and
Yeah.
your
If you want to
present.
meet their argument where they're at, I mean, there's so many other arguments, but I think the Dhamma should it should be available here and now. The teachings, the benefits are now, like, and can be taught and talked about in that way. And so, like, yep, I think the hedonism, I want to live once argument is fine, but this is now, and this is, the Buddha talks about it clearly. Like, even if it is only now, he says, this is way more pleasant. Like, and that's the idea.
Thank you.
So, in a situation like with love and marriage, is that not so much an obstruction, but just another opportunity for that discipline of 6Ring and making sure that your engagement with your chosen relationship just stays, I don't know.
Yeah, what was the first part of it about love and marriage?
Well, just how do you fit all this into that framework where I guess just like with eating, there's a potential to have craving for food, and same with love and marriage, there's a potential. Is that not an obstruction? It's just an opportunity.
Well, yeah, for lay people, the lifestyle is different. Lay people are not monastics, and so yeah, then you work with your relationship as skillfully as possible. There may or may not come a time when you leave that relationship, of course, but no, we love our people around us as best we can, and that's what the Dhamma does. And so, yep, that's the answer. It's to love your family and your loved ones well, and like that, and yeah.
Okay. Just
I'm not sure if this is related, but it sounds like I think it's Digha Nikaya 29, where they talk about the Sangha and who makes up the Sangha. And there are lay followers who are celibate that make up the Sangha, and there are lay followers who partake of the pleasures in life that are also part of the Sangha. So I imagine that married folks are the lay followers who partake of some of the pleasures in life, and there are also celibate lay followers who don't partake of the pleasures of ordinary life. So you don't have to be a monk.
Develop the Dhamma, right.
To develop the Dhamma at all. And, even partaking of pleasures, right, there's always overindulgence, right? Even if it's not quote unquote immoral pleasure, there's still overindulgence and attachment that we can, 6R away. It's my understanding.
I think there's a very wonderful dynamic with the 6Rs in a relationship because of in the lay life, there's so many opportunities for tightness or tension or things that happen, and
Yes, it is not easy.
the willingness of being a partner and with a loving open heart saying just 6R it, you know. It's a way to work with the Dharma practice and at the same time, you know, relieve the tightness or tension or the identification that's going on.
Mhm.
And the use of that tool is quite fantastic.
Well said. I mean, when you can 6R, you can be present to what's happening. A lot of our disagreements in marriage or in any relationship are people not hearing each other and not being really present with what's being said. And when you can 6R, you can be there with them. That's usually, I mean, I'm not a psychologist or family therapist or anything, but usually that's what people want, is to be heard and with you, right? And when you 6R and you can bring loving kindness, there you are, right? That's right.
You still have to take out the garbage.
Still do, still do, but maybe you trade off. I don't know, or maybe
Mr. Teens, and 6R teens.
no. Oh.
No. Oh.
So I look at the practice as mastering a skill, like
Yes.
riding a bicycle or swimming. At first, you start with basics, and then you master, and then you get better. So, is there any age limitation? Like, you don't start riding a bicycle, learning like when you're, I don't know, 1 year old, and you don't start it when you're 90-year-old. So, I was just wondering,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
with
I mean,
kids or
it's never too late or too early to start. I have a son, and he was sitting on a meditation cushion when he was two.
two. Wow.
Oh yeah, for sure. Uh, yeah, and at 2 or 3, we would sit there, and you know, a 3-year-old has an attention span. A minute's pretty good, you know. But really,
Can you share some? I mean, how do you guide them?
Well,
If
you
it's not
always
too
talk
personal.
about it is one thing. So it's at the dinner table. You're talking all the time, so they know about how you're thinking about emotions and attachment and relaxing and so on. So it's normal. It's in the air. Um, a young child, you put them to bed and you tell them stories, and it's like, well, now we send happy thoughts to grandma, to teacher, and you know, to everybody, and so they naturally start doing that. Um, the sitting still and initiating it is the hard part. But if you start young, like, you know, they learn what's expected of this game you're playing now. And that's you sit for a minute or 3, and it's a fun game and it's not too bad. And, you know, and they learn to do it. Make it fun. You know, I have a picture of my little guy wrapped in my meditation blanket, and he just loved that. Put on dad's meditation blanket and sit on the cushion. And then you just have it in the air. And then as they get older, then you have formal, all family, ideally meditation times. We all sit down for 5 minutes or more and meditate. Maybe talk about it a little before, what's going to happen. As they get older, be sure to point out how'd you feel before, how'd you feel afterwards. And then they will use that tool. And now my boy is 13. We still do family meditation practice, and I've watched him. When he gets upset, he will go meditate. I mean, it's just fantastic. He's like, no, I'm gonna go meditate. We'll sit on the couch and sit there and just like calm down. And where was that when I was, you know, like, so that you make it natural, no big deal. The teachings are just the dinner table. You know, don't even make a big deal about it. It's just what we do, how we are. I think as they start learning about other things and other religions, you just talk about it. It's like this is the deal, and this is it, I know my guy went through stages of really wanting to know about the Buddha and what it meant and how it meant. I mean, before he wasn't interested in it intellectually, and then he was, and then he reached for it, and then we talked about it. And then it goes phases where he internalizes it more or less. But like that, let it be really natural, like breathing, you know? Yeah.
Thank you. This is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess then when people in our lives are caught in cycles of suffering, the answer is it not to try to make them Buddhist, but to accept them as they are and just use that as your opportunity for loving kindness.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep. We don't try to fix anybody anytime or offer them solution unless they ask for it. We love them as they are, and that's what they want. Yep. Yep. That's what it is. We don't know how to fix them either. That's the other thing. I mean, we don't. Like this doesn't teach you how to fix people. Maybe yourself if you work at it. But like how to talk to people skillfully is still a practice, and we still can say wrong things, and you don't want to send loving kindness arrogantly or anything. I mean, you got to be skillful and be with them, and you learn to communicate as best you can. But that openness and that loving kindness, like that's the key. Yeah, no, don't try to fix. When they're curious, when they see your example, then you talk about it. That's,
Anyone?
Can you possibly give some words of encouragement about basically making the best use of the last full day of meditation for us tomorrow before things start shutting down or whatever?
well, there'll be time to meditate on Saturday.
Okay.
No, relax, have fun. You've been doing this all week. Your mind knows what to do. That's the thing at this point. The energy is good. The habits are there. Now it's not about trying or making something happen. It's about allowing your mind to do what you've been doing all week. Any extra energy is not what you're doing. You're just letting go and letting it happen, like that, and have fun. Right? You've been working. You've been having a good retreat. So.
Yeah, seems like there's a lot of momentum built up. Good opportunity
Exactly.
here.
All right. I'll share some merit. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit, and may it thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May deities and empty space and earth, Devas and Navas and mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu.